Hello, welcome back. My apologies. I think Instagram is not liking me playing music anymore. Um, Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. My apologies. Instagram was a little delayed and I guess wasn't very impressed with me and the music that I was playing. So it got shut down for copyright reasons. So I think I'm going to have to reevaluate. I'm going to have to reevaluate this music sharing at this point. So I'm just going to wait a couple of more minutes for people to return. Again, my apologies for Instagram just ending when we were doing such amazing things. So I'll give it a couple of more minutes and have people kind of return to this live. So we'll just give it about another 30 seconds. And yeah, I'm afraid to play music while we wait for people to come because I don't want something like this to happen again. So we'll just give it a few minutes and then we'll start again. Yeah. What can we do? We just have to kind of work with this thing called technology. Yes? Okay, so let's try this one more time. So I was at the line acknowledgement, so we're going to do it again from the beginning and start it properly. So Dance Immersion's work is centered in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We give thanks to the ancestors for the path they have paved and for the protection and guidance they continue to offer as we journey forward. We give thanks for the many blessings that have enabled us to gather here. We give thanks to one another, knowing that we can only do what we do by working together respectfully and peacefully. We acknowledge that the land we gather on is on traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Hanishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. This includes the many people, named and unnamed, who have stewarded this land before our arrival. The territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peacefully care for and share the resources around the Great Lakes. We are treaty people, including those of us who came here as settlers, either in this generation, and everything is falling apart today for me, either in this generation or in generation past, for those who came here involuntary, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. We are grateful to be able to share this space with so many knowledge keepers, including the courageous artists with whom Dance Immersion collaborates with every day. Ashe. Thank you. Okay, so our guests are here, so I'm gonna invite our guests in, and then afterwards I will introduce them and the wonderful things that they do. So just give me one moment here. We have one.
Wagwan.
Hey, Superstar, how are you?
Hey,
I look
superstars. What's up?
you.
Hello, hello,
Hey,
Pulga. Hello,
everybody.
Zara. Hello, Dance
Hello.
Immersion. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Pulga. Hi,
Hey,
Emily. How are you? Beautiful people.
Good, so
Okay,
good.
hold on.
Thank
Give me a
you.
second because it just seems like everything behind me is just falling apart. So we're just
that's
going to do a quick background change so it doesn't. There you go.
Okay.
great.
Quick costume change. We're good.
And is the
So,
lighting okay? Because it's like I have light coming in. It's like it seemed to be just let me know if I should change anything.
No,
you're beautiful just the way you are.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
actually
you.
jealous because of all the dust sunshine coming out
Uh,
on your face.
Yes, you have that natural light hitting
That's
against you,
right.
so everything is wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, I love that natural light.
Beautiful. So For those who don't know these amazing superstars that I have the pleasure of speaking with today, I'm just going to introduce them. So we'll start with Emilie Jabouin. Emilie Jabouin,
Yes.
she left for stage, is a curious, intuitive dance artist and researcher who uses her storytelling abilities for collective liberation and engages in performance and research projects that focus on social transformation, reparation, and collective healing. Trained in ballet, jazz, modern, and Caribbean dance forms, Emilie has performed with Ballet Creole, Cachet Dance, Ronald Taylor Band, Mafa Dance Village, AC Mensa Creations, and Lua Cheyenne Dance Company. She also has an ongoing collaborative relationship with performer Camille Turner, who currently has an installation with Emilie, is performing for the Toronto Biennial called Nave until June 5th, 2022. You can see Emilie's face all over, the TTC subways in the GTA. She will also be featured in Ronald Taylor's Untitled Red film production screening on July 8th and 9th, 2022. She is completing a PhD in communication studies on Black women writers, journalists, and organizers in the early 20th century in Canada. Under the mentorship of master drummer, Haitian teacher, and choreographer Pinel Guerrier, she has also embarked on her path of learning, sharing, and living Haitian culture through folk drumming, singing, and dancing, a journey home. She now offers a series of introductory movement classes to heal the body, mind, spirit through movement. Through movement, chanting, rhythmic exploration for various levels and abilities, called Godwe. I'm not going to say this correctly, so I'm going to try this again. Dugwe. Did I say it correctly?
Dogwe. Yeah,
Dugwe.
almost. Dogwe. But that's good. Thank you.
Okay. In 2020, she merged her art and research practices and founded a multifaceted research, performance, and production company, Emerge Projects, which offers research, production, and artistic services to help creative manifest their vision. Emilie is the author of an article on Black women jazz dancers in mid-20th century in Montreal, published in the winter 2021 special issue of the Canadian Journal of History on Black Creative Practices.
Wow.
Welcome,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Emilie. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for all the love. I see the hearts. I see thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And then we have our other superstar as well, Mr. Pulga Muchochoma. Pulga was born in Mozambique. His dance career and training began in Quelimane with Montes Manuli Dance Company. In 2006, he came to Toronto with the company for the International AIDS Conference. With Montes Manuli Shakespeare Link Canada, he performed in several shows in venues in Toronto and Mozambique. When Montes Manuli returned to Mozambique, Pulga stayed in Toronto to study at the School of Toronto Dance Theatre. In 2009, he joined the company, Toronto Dance Theatre, where he danced for 11 seasons.
Wow. Amazing.
For 11 seasons under the leadership of Christopher House. With TDT, Pulga worked with many local and international artists, and he also participated in the 2015 open ceremony of the Toronto Pan Am Games with Cirque du Soleil and MBS. He's also the creator and founder of Pulga Dance since 2015. Welcome.
Yo.
I feel like I need to take a breath, okay? After these two bios, I need to take a breath. I need to kind of compose myself, just to kind of breathe the air of these two superstars in front of me right now. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Before we start off, how are you? How are you doing?
We good. We good. First of all, I want to say thanks to you and Dance Immersion for making this moment, be a special one because, first of all, I'm a big fan of the two of you and I'm a big fan of that amazing organization. So yeah, but I feel good. I feel great. Working, busy, and stuff like that. And when you do the things that you're supposed to do in this world, it just makes life nice. So I'm good.
Thank
Beautiful.
you, Volga.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm good as well. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm so glad it's nice out.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to be talking with the two of you. Like, I really appreciate being invited by Dance Immersion. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Oh, beautiful. I'm so glad that you guys are doing okay. I'm so happy and humbled to be able to speak to both of you this evening. So we're just going to jump right in. So whoever wants to start will be great. So just kind of explain a little bit. I know that I went through your bio, but just explain a little bit. What is your art practice? And how did you learn it? So was it through an academic education? Was it through life experiences? Or was it kind of a combination of both?
Oof.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, I'll start and say that I'm a Haitian folk dancer. And I am so happy, like I could jump off the walls right now that I'm able to say that because it was a really long journey, and a journey with Haitian folk dance that started very recently, right? Because based on my bio, like you said, I explored a lot of different dance forms, and I have a story about that sort of catalyst moment when I realized, okay, I really do have to focus on Haitian folk dance. So that includes drumming. I'm not a drummer, I am a dancer, but I do drum the rhythms, or I'm learning to drum the rhythms. I'm a dancer, I'm a performer, I'm a storyteller.
Mm.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. Thanks, Emily, for sharing that. Yeah, for me, same. I was born in Mozambique, and my career pretty much initiated in Mozambique. And my training, I think, began when I was a young boy. I feel like I was one of those kids back in the village when the elders are having some kind of gathering or event. I'm in the front row, busting my moves and stuff like that. So I feel like that's when everything began for me. And then at some point, I transitioned from like that kind of a local way of dancing and doing African dance, and I went into a professional. I started playing soccer like every other boy, let's say, back in Mozambique. And I kind of knew that I wanted to be a soccer player, but dancing was also something that I always loved. At some point, I decided to actually focus on dance, and I did a lot of traditional African dance, more from the southern part of Africa, Mozambique, Angola, all of those countries coming together. And with the company, with the Montes Namuli, we there was this thing as every dancer, every musician, and everybody should learn how to do everything. So the dancer would do 1 hour class, and then after 1 hour, everybody just gets on the drum and they play drum, and we would rotate where everybody practice everything. So yeah, I kind of use my dance technique with all of this thing that I've learned from soccer playing, music playing, singing, and dancing. I think that's one of those things that I think make this practice of mine today, what it is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about how did I learn it, um, I'd say that there was a big part of the learning process that was part of this, like a discovery, right? A discovery of self. So, in learning ballet, in learning jazz, in becoming a contemporary dancer, because I'm also a contemporary dancer,
Mhm.
I developed skills like that were technical, but then there was a foundation that I felt I was missing. And so I was born and raised in Ottawa. And when I came to Toronto, I actually didn't originally come to dance, but at the back of my at the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'm gonna get back into dance.
Yeah.
And so and I was really excited about, at the time, companies like Koba and Ballet Creole. And but then in coming here, I also realized that I was also looking for like something specifically Haitian. And it isn't until the pandemic hit that I was forced into a place of, okay, the companies you dance with are not functioning right now. So what are you going to do? And so being able to find an online community that then connected me to my mentor, Peniel Guerrier, who is in New York, and who I've had the chance to train with, like, in person, you know, little segments of time here and there. But it's just the fact that he really pushes me to dig deep inside myself to also find what makes my art practice what it is, because I am of Haitian descent. So my parents are Haitian. I grew up in a cultural context that was connected to Haiti or Haitian. You know, I mean, we can talk more about it. And so how I learned it was digging back into, or looking, like the word is, I had to surrender, and I had to just follow my purpose and follow my path. And the language, or the foundation that I needed to do that, is Haitian folk. And so, you know, I train with him weekly, in drumming, in singing the folk songs, and in dancing, perfecting the movement and the technique of folk.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think Emily reminded me of this thing of like family and stuff like that, where for me, you know, my father was like most people, like making your parents proud is like a goal, you know, growing up. And I feel like I wanted to do something that my parents would be proud of. And my father wanted me to be a soccer player, but as soon as I started dancing seriously, like intensively, I feel like this is it. And having my father on the other side kind of like not being supportive and be like, this is gonna be a hard, you know, profession for you as a man. That's how the old school parents would see, you know, like you need to do something that financially will bring you more money to take care of your family. This is like all way back in the days. Of course, that's the reality of things, but to me, I feel like that was the motivation that I needed to prove my dad that I think you're wrong. I think I'm gonna fight so hard to do better at this thing that I love, and get to a place where one day you're gonna look at me and be like, yeah, he fought really hard for it. So you know, my motivation was pretty much that. The biggest motivation for me was that wall between my father's belief and my personal goal to like achieve my career as a dancer.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And what I'm getting from the both of you is one, everything starts from your foundation, right? So everything starts from, you know, from Mozambique, where you were, and everybody being gathered. Emilie, kind of going back to your Haitian roots and your Haitian folk. And then after, from there, depending on your motivation or depending on your drive, then it leads you to different places and different experiences, right? But at the end of the day, it's a combination of both, right? Like you need that heart. You need that heart to be able to have that love for the art that you're doing, but that drive and that foundation to carry you through along your journey. So let's split them apart, right? So let's split apart when we talk about somebody who is technically trained, right? What does that mean to you? How do you define when somebody says, I'm a technically trained dancer? How do you define it? How do you understand it for you?
Yeah, technique. You know, like I'm just gonna go to say the word technique. I think there's a lot of expectation that a technical dancer have to be trained in an institution of like professionally known as this organization will train you to become a very technical dancer. But when you go back to the roots, you know, traditional dance are things that are not made by institution. Those are things that are passed on from generation to generation. So for me, technical dancer or anything that is requires in the word technique is something that you have to do a lot of research. You have to know the value behind whatever this technique that you think you call is your art form. You have to know. You really have to know whether you graduated from a professional training program or whether you come from the village in a place where like people just wake up in the morning and that's what they do in order to practice and get better. So for me, a technical dancer is somebody who invests in knowing this technique behind what they call art for them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. So when you say technical training, I hear two things. I hear the issue of the way that the Western world understands technique and professionalism,
Yes.
and this sort of lost connection that we have in rooting our approach, our technique, or our philosophy when we approach dance or art from an Afro perspective. So, sorry, I was saying a lot of words in my head, but what I mean by that is that when I know that when I came into the dance and performance scene in Toronto, the issue was technique. Like, I actually did not have it. And I didn't have it because I was coming from a ballet background, and also because I actually hadn't trained in an institution. So I didn't have maybe that rigor, that stamina. You know, there's certain things that you do gain from training in an institution or in a controlled context. Like, I think that's given. But I do agree with Pulga that, you know, when we're talking about traditional dances, the training and the technique comes from constant repetition, from understanding the drum, understanding that how the rhythm responds to the body, how it connects to the tempo, how the different instruments harmonize and tell your body what to do, or maybe how the drummer is mapping on your body. You know, like, it's always in conversation, and that is a very complex technique. Like, that's an art that really has to be crafted, and it has to become a part of your life. So so when I think of technique, I think, of course, it's so important, because the technique that I did not have is understanding the rhythms or the pattern of the drum, being able to listen, right? I didn't have that. Understanding the specific technique in Afro dance that, you know, you utilize, like the pelvis more, or that allowed like the whole body to respond to any movement, that really reflected, I think, that holistic approach that I mean, from my perspective as a Black person, that Black people embrace when we dance, when we do our art form. So technique is extremely important, but sometimes I think that we think of technique not as that, but as, oh, you have to have like perfectly pointed feet, or you have to be able to, I don't know, you have to look a certain way. And that's the issue, I think, is that that look, now, like, people are trying to get shortcuts to get the look, but they haven't done the work of what does that movement mean, or how did I get to that movement, or how are my arms in conversation with my torso? You know, like, that's the type of technique that we need to go back to and steer away from the look, right? Because there's no foundation to the look, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I love that. It's redefining what that term technically trained means, right? Because like you said, when we say technically trained, we think of certain, if we're talking about dance, we think of certain dance forms, right? Emily, like you said, we think of certain looks, or certain aesthetic, I should say, right? So we think of certain aesthetic, not realizing that no matter what dance form around the world that you do, everything has its own technique. Right?
Absolutely.
So whether you're in Brazil and you're doing samba, or you're in Ghana, or you're in Haiti or Mozambique, or I can go around the world, everything has its own technique. So somebody who does a traditional form of dance in Mozambique could have a great technique and then come here to Toronto and they're like, yeah, but no.
Yeah.
Right? Or Emily, like you were saying, like, you started with ballet and jazz, and when we look at what we think of technically trained is, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, you're technically trained. But then when you came to do a different dance form, you're like, no, you don't have the right form, right?
Right.
So it's really debunking the association of the aesthetic and the art form that when we talk about technically trained people think of.
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of leads to my next question, which is really the same thing, which I feel like I've just answered the question, is that does your opinion on being self-taught depending on the art or the practice? But then I feel like for both of you, it doesn't really matter because actually, let me just ask you. I don't want to speak for you. So the question is, in your opinion, how do self-taught or self-trained people learn their art or their practice?
Yeah. And I think, so I actually don't necessarily consider myself self-taught because I still feel like I needed quite a bit of guidance to discover myself and to discover my movement. And even with my mentor right now, he still has to remind me, like, where's this movement coming from? Why are you doing this? So I think, however, I think that the self-taught people who I've met, the technique or being taught has just only added, to the curiosity maybe. And in a sense, I also want to debunk, as we're supposed to do during this conversation, the idea of self-taught and not self-taught, because essentially when you're training, you are absorbing information, you are teaching it to yourself, you are incorporating it. So there has to be some kind of self-taught because not everybody learns the same way, or not everybody understands a movement the same way. And it takes a really great instructor to be able to understand how each student grasps the information.
Yeah, self-taught is it's an interesting word for me because I feel like self-taught is just the beginning of the climbing the mountain part. Because at some point you will need someone, just like Emily said, because you cannot just walk in a room and then not have a music and just in the white wall, nothing in front of you, nothing, not even a book or like a laptop for you to watch stuff, and then start teaching yourself. You know what I mean? You need something to teach yourself. So to me, as soon as you use something or someone as an inspiration, then does the question become, are you now a self-taught when you're teaching from someone who's not there with you? So there's a teacher eventually, or an inspiration book that you take to studio that becomes your teacher at that moment. So, some teachers, I mean, but I understand the definition of self-taught, but I feel like at some point, self-taught becomes a thing just to open the door to like, what are you trying to go, and yeah, this goes back to like me when I start dancing in Mozambique with the professional dance company. I was a beginner at that moment. I just walked right in the studio and the artistic director told me like, all right, join the line, let's go, right? And nobody gave me any notes. They just let me figure it out with everybody who was way, way better than me at that moment. So I kind of like took everything from everybody. So those people, without teaching me at that moment, became my teacher, So I was taking everything as much as I can, even though it wasn't like, okay, Pulga, do the right leg, left leg. They will just do it and say, follow, let's go. And so for me, self-taught is an interesting word because at some point you just need a teacher, whether it's a person or an inspiration, material or something. You will need something or somebody to take you to the next level.
And I'd like to add to that too, that self-taught to me, I think sometimes people associate self-taught to just like practice, like, oh, this person is so practical, they just do it, right?
Yeah.
And that being taught is like theory, and as though those things are different. But I think that the reality is that any theory has come from somewhere, from some practice. Somebody had to develop it. And I think that teaching the theory tends to be about just passing on like that research, like Pulga said. There's some people who've done a lot of research, so why not benefit from all that knowledge, and then you can add to it. So it's really like interlinked, like, yeah. And sometimes it comes naturally to some people because they feel like, yeah, this is actually really close to my experience, or they've been able to to, to explore it and discover it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
I
at some
think
point, sorry,
mhm.
no,
oh
go ahead,
sorry,
go ahead.
and then I think that at some point, when you get advanced enough or you get to that place in your career, then you develop actually your own theory. You start like being really explicit about how it is that you do things and how it is that you want to teach the next generation. So
Mhm.
it's like,
Yeah.
interlinked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody who has oh, I think it's AC. I
Yeah.
can't read the whole comment, but
Yeah,
it looks
I'm
juicy.
gonna read it in a sec, but I think Pulga, you
Okay.
also wanted to add something to that.
No, I think based on I saw the last few part of what AC Mensa said, I was going back to the ancestors,
Mm.
when the generation of communication and writing and speaking, like there's a traditional dance called Shigubu in Mozambique, which is in South Africa, is similar to Zulu dance. And people will use that dance to communicate and then, train to become a warrior, to become something. So,
Mm.
I feel like the ancestors in a traditional, I'm gonna speak specifically in traditional African dance.
Mm-hmm.
Ancestor is the biggest teacher you can have, because if
Mhm.
you really invest on the history behind this technique, then that's your main teacher at this moment. Then everybody else that comes along also maybe, also went through that. So you kind of you want to dream big before, like it's one of those things you have to dream big. If you want to go to a traditional African dance, you have to go to the ancestors because that's the way where at the end of the day everything falls into.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So AC Mensa says self-taught doesn't mean that there isn't any guidance. Even if the guidance comes from ancestors, there's
Mm.
guidance through self that can help you understand what to hold on to and let go of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
boy, yeah, boy. Yeah, boy, yeah, boy.
Mm.
Thank you so much, AC.
Killed it.
That's it. I think going back to when we were saying debunk certain terminologies, from what I'm getting from the both of you, self-trained or self-taught or how you want to put it, is that initial curiosity, right?
Yeah.
That initial
Mhm.
spark or spotlight where you're like, oh, right? Like even Paga, when you were mentioning before how you were really into soccer and then you saw
Yeah.
dance and you were like, this is something that I may want to go
Yeah.
into.
Hmm.
So it's that initial spark, right?
Yeah.
That connection to what the ancestors already knew you were going to go into. They were just waiting for you to catch up. Yeah.
That's right.
Mm.
And then over time, yes, you might say, okay, well, let me just try this movement. Let me try this movement. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, and
Yeah.
Tash has said it in season in episode 1, we don't live under a vacuum. So at some
No.
point in time, you are going to connect with somebody else, right? It
Yeah.
may not be
Mhm.
in a classroom setting. Sure, it could be in a
Hmm.
park. It could be anywhere. But you are still going to connect with somebody some way, somehow to continue on that journey of your art practice,
Yeah.
right? So unless it's just you, your four walls, and nothing else, it can't really be self-trained because at one point in
Right.
time within that journey, somewhere, some line, you will be guided or shown, and then
Yeah.
it's up to you to be like, okay, I'm taking this information, or I may put that information on the side and it might not work for me, right?
Right.
Or you may decide to teach or whatever may be in terms of your journey in said practice. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so you touched upon it a little bit, but let's go back. Does the origin of your training or the journey of your training depend on your practice? So depending on your art form, will your training vary?
Hmm. Oof. That's a good question.
And
uh,
silence falls beyond the crowd.
it is an interesting
Also,
question.
everybody that's watching us, you can also like comment or ask questions in the chat, and I will get to you guys as they come along.
Hmm. It's funny because I don't know, because for example, I'm not a visual artist. Like I don't paint or draw, but so I don't want to, make assumptions. But what I understand from performing and also based on what Pulga said of how, you know, you trained in everything, like you had to be able to do everything. So to me, oh, sorry, could you repeat the question again? Because I feel like there's like a detail in the question that I want to really speak to.
Okay, sure. So the question is, does the origin of your training, right, or how you got trained to learn your art form, does that depend on the artistic practice?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. So to a certain extent, I mean, as a performer, I think it does, in the sense that as a dancer who needs to understand the drumming patterns, like for example in Haitian folk, I really and that's how the training started for me with my mentor, is that he would say, and actually it was a funny conversation because I met him through a gathering that he had planned. And then I ended up on his emailing list, and then I started going to his classes online that were so technical. And I was really impressed that he could even, like, through the screen correct me in very specific ways. And then he sat me down one day, or called me, and asked me like what I was about, you know, like what it is that I really wanted to do. And I said I wanted to be able to say that I was a Haitian folk dancer and that I understand Haitian folk and I dance it. And he told me, okay, well, you know what? Like, if you really want to know how to dance, you have to be able to drum the patterns. So to me, as a performer who's dancing to the drums, I have to take a lot of time to just listen to the music. I have to take a lot of time to break down the movements, to explore them, to push them further. I have to spend a lot of time, you know, even like spiritually connecting to what that means. And so I think for me, maybe the spiritual connection is what I would say is universal to any type of art form, because you do have to go back into yourself, connect, you know, to the ancestors. Is that something you believe in? And but I do think that there are specific things that different artists might have to do that other artists might not have to do. Like I'm not sure, as a visual artist, somebody might be inspired by music, but they don't need the music necessarily, I think, to be able to paint. But I have to understand, like, it, you know, because if I'm just doing the movement, it becomes nothing. It becomes just a movement. What does it mean if it's not in conversation with the drum, with the rhythm? What does it mean? It doesn't mean what the folk, you know, set it out to mean. So there are a lot of things that I know that I have to do because of the specific art form I believe in. And I think it also ties to how I see life as well. Like, and how I see, like, the art form that I chose as life. Like, art is life, life is art, you know, type of thing.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I think for me, one thing I keep thinking about is my art form is one thing that I feel like it is in this place right now because I had to train myself to be comfortable with myself and be confident with messing up my choices, my artistic choices. So I'm comfortable messing it up because I know how to fix it. And sometimes I don't know it, but I know the fact that I don't know it, it's a good place to be, you know, because one thing that I've realized as a performer, like when I do solo work, for example, I don't want to be in a place where I feel like I'm too comfortable with things, you know. And this is like many years of trying to understand what is the truth art form of like my personal art form, because there's this art form that I spoke about, the ancestor, the back home as connected, and then there's my Pulga personal interest on like how do I not take this thing, this art form that belongs to my ancestors, and then make it my own in a way that still belongs to that place, you know. And this comes from many years of like confusions too, right? Because when I was in Mozambique doing African dance, I was like in top of my game. I feel like I was good at it. I was very, in my mind, I was very good at it because there was that freedom of like to fly with other people with you, or hold hands and run. And then when I came to Canada, I started studying contemporary dance. I felt like a big wall just fell in front of me, because now that's when this technique became so unique, and even a thing such as standing up became a big deal. Like, you have to know how to stand up. I'm like, nobody ever told me that I need to stand up like this. But then I had to teach myself how to accept that. And many years of investing in that kind of thinking, it changed my past. It changed my perspective of what learning was, because it took me out of my home for a while. I disappeared out of my own self for a long time. Like, to the point where, like, after a long time of training contemporary dance, people will tell me, wow, your contemporary dance looks too African to me. And then when I go home, I'm doing African dance, they'll be like, oh yeah, your African dance is too contemporary. So it's a place, it's a bridge that I feel like I didn't know where I belonged, But one thing that I decided to do now is, like, take advantage of this art form and be comfortable with it. So I own it now. It's mine. So I'm comfortable being uncomfortable and messing it up choices. I could, go in the studio and be like, this is the art form that I'm doing it. I know it, but at this moment I don't know it, because it can go any direction. So yeah. Yeah.
And I think, Pulga, as I was listening to you speak, I was thinking how unfortunate it is that we're expected in some circles to dissociate who we are from what we do. Like, how does that make any sense, right? And it also got me thinking about, when you said, oh, you have to know how to stand. It made me think of how important breathing is in dance, and that's also part of the technique, right? Like, if you don't know how to breathe, or you're tense, again, back to knowing yourself, if you're uncomfortable about something, it's going to manifest in your breathing, and you just won't be able to dance, right? And so it's also about understanding how to use the breath for the movement. This is a really interesting conversation. Got me thinking about a lot.
Sorry to cut you, Emily. I just didn't want to lose. I just want to carry on with your train of thoughts, because it's really cool. Breathing is one thing that made me a better performer. Like, back in 2006, when I started dancing, 2007, 8, 9, I thought I was a very good dancer technically. And, like, with the time, I thought I was a better dancer, but as I started getting older, even not older and wiser with my decision making, I realized, like, breathing made me understand that my performance got better with the time, because of, like, I have to take time with myself. I have to take time for people to see me. I have to take time to see people. And before, I was so focused on my technique, and that was the only thing that mattered to me at that moment. I just want to jump high and point my feet, or whatever. If I'm doing African dance, do all of those traditional African dance jumps and stuff like that, and enjoyed that. But at the end of the day, I was off stage, and I'm like out of breath, completely out of breath. But but now, when I use that breath and I go on stage, I can do an hour solo because I'm in charge. I'm in control of my body. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Natasha says, and I think greatness comes from that. A completely new art form can arise from varied experiences and technique. And she also says the breath is everything. So it really goes back to you, the person, right? When you started saying that if you're not connected to yourself, nothing can really, I shouldn't say nothing can really work. It will not be authentic. Let me say that part. I think that probably would be better, right? And understanding, who you are in this space, in this energy, in this form, in this art, whatever it is that you're doing. And then remembering that through breath before you even move, right? And then afterwards, then everything will start kind of making sense and kind of puzzling together and intersecting. But until you can be able to look inwards, there's not much outwards that can happen. And if the outwards does happen, then yes, you get stuff like you're out of breath backstage, right? Because you're just performing, but you're not living and breathing in what you are, what you're doing. And then I'm just going to read one more thing from Fatima. Pulga got me thinking that how your journey how your journey, wait, hold on, something happened now I can't see. Okay, there you go. How your journey might affect your purpose is like a bridge between two worlds, the Western and the African.
Hmm.
Yes. It's literally finding that bridge
Yeah.
between what you have learned and where you came from and what you're connected to, right?
Yeah.
Just like how Emily, you were saying, you were doing all these things, but you still had that connection to go back into your Haitian folklore, right? And that no matter what happened, no matter where you were, you still knew in the back of your mind that you wanted to go back. Right. And then Pulga, you build that bridge to be like, okay, well, now that what I've learned here in Canada versus what I already know in Mozambique, how do we now make them flow in the two rivers kind of intersect so they can flow together
Yes.
and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much, Fatima, for adding on to the space. So in saying that and thinking about your past, your present, and then where are we going in the future, is there anything else that you think that you would have liked to have done differently in your artistic development?
Ah, I don't have a lot of, to be honest, I don't have a lot of things that I regret on my path. I not say that I don't have any. I said I don't have a lot of them. Like I was always this kind of person that I feel like I knew what I wanted, even though sometimes there'll be a wall in front of me, and I knew how to climb it. And so so the only thing that I feel like that I wish that I had done more in my past is do more of traditional African dance here in Canada. Because once I get into contemporary dance, I feel like that took me, because also I was doing like professional training program, and that was like took most of my time. I'm not complaining about that, but I also feel like maybe I wish I had more time to go back home and do that more often. That's one thing that I wish I had done it, because I've lost a lot of knowledge of my traditional background African dance. I still have the moves, but if I do African dance beside a traditional African dancer, I will definitely see how much have changed, and I wish that didn't happen, but that's life. Yeah.
Emily, what about you?
I say very similarly to Polka, I don't regret very many things. I I'd say it's hard to say because there's always been so much going on in my life that I maybe couldn't travel as much as I wanted to go to a festival or a show, or sometimes I just didn't have the finances to pay these classes or to take these classes. So I'd say I maybe if things were a little bit different, I think I would have been more curious and I would have explored more, and I would have committed more to like taking a range of classes when I could, because I also think that there's a challenge of what is available in the city or where you are, and a big part of why I stopped dancing for a long time between right before I came to Toronto was because I wasn't finding what I wanted or what was calling me in Ottawa. But I have to say your question also made me realize how grateful I am that there were certain things, like when I came, Koba and Ballet Creole had started trying to rebuild, a type of program, new dance. I went through that. It really gave me like bits and pieces of something that I could work with, and being able to intern with cachet dance and then dance with cachet dance, even if there wasn't like maybe as a robust institutional program, the fact that I could take classes, the fact that I could perform, like that's all part of training. Then meeting Ronald Taylor, working with him, dancing with him, Prime Guerra, like a big, 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 big shout out. Really, I'd say like he just took my dancing to another level. And everybody who I've worked with has given me so much. yeah, has given me so much. So I'm really thankful and grateful that I actually took those opportunities. I did that. Um, yeah, and even Yeah, and even, and I have to shout out to AC as well.
Yo.
It was a conversation with her where, she sort of said, like, why aren't you doing Haitian folk? Like, what's the deal, basically. And then a part of me was like, wait a minute, but I've tried. And then in a way, she was saying, but you haven't tried hard enough. Like,
Yeah.
what's the issue? Like, what's stopping you?
Yeah.
And so really being part of that catalyst. And also shout out to Allison Trunzer, who's been like such a good friend and who was always honest with me about my dancing. And he's one of those people who told me, like, Emily, you actually the technique is not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And I just love that. And I'm thinking, and it's been a blessing to also work with the two of you and Mafa and, so many people, Lua.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, also shout out also again a shout out to AC, of course, like that's the sister right there, AC is one of those person that when you think you're too busy and then you see AC, you're like, no, I'm not that busy. Uh, I need to step up my game. So it's really nice to see people like that because we need a train that moves that fast, and it's very easy for us to be like, oh, I'm working on this project. I'm gonna work on the next one next week. But there's a way to do a lot of stuff at once, and like there's someone who told me that one of my favorite phrases is like you have to choose your hard, and choosing your heart actually helps you finding the right place to be. And I'm not saying just fall into it. You just have to make the choice to choose your heart because most of the choices that we make in life are very hard, and you just have to choose the heart that satisfies you. And so I kind of like understand this kind of stuff from seeing other people like choosing their heart, like working hard enough that makes them happy. So I think AC Mensa and one of those. Shout out to Miss Cocoletti who just joined in. Big sis. Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Yes. So, So shout out to, there's so many people. Shout out to, Miss AC Mensa, the Miss AC, what I can say. But also shout out to those who help us along our journey, right? Whether it's, like Pulga mentioned, seeing AC and you're like, I gotta do more, right? Or somebody else who directly has also helped you in your development, right? So it's just appreciating the people who have been on your path, right? Whether positive or negative, right? Sometimes we only think of the great things that people have done, right? But then the things that were not so favorable also can help us in our development, right? It may not be so positive at the moment, but in hindsight, we could see that, because of the no that they told us, or because they were the naysayers, it kind of helped us stay our course, or convinced us that no, I think I'm on the right track. Right?
Yeah.
I also want to add Isaac's comment. Dance is challenging in Toronto, mostly to find African dance class / connections for newcomers in Canada. Yes, it is. But we will continue to find a way to bridge that gap. Dance Immersion continues to find a way to also bridge that gap so we can be able to help everybody, newcomers as well as those who have been here for a minute, so we can lessen the challenge that Isaac has referred to. Thank you so much, Isaac.
Yes,
and
thank
then
you.
Queen, if I didn't say your name correctly, I apologize. Queen Kukui says, that was beautifully put. Choose your heart or your heart. And Isaac also said, it's awesome to see you, Emmy, and hope to connect soon again. Hello, Mike. Hello, Coco. Okay, so I know we're going to go a little bit over time, so if it's okay with you guys just to kind of stretch it out maybe another 10, 15 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yes.
totally fine.
Okay. Everybody else in the chat, I hope that's okay. But I'm just loving how we're sharing, we're connecting. I feel your vibe and energy. I just but I love the both of you, you know that.
You.
So my question is, okay, so in engaging with other artists,
Mhm.
did your experiences or your ability to connect with them or work with them, did you find that it differed depending on their journey, their training journey or their artistic journey?
Hmm.
I feel like this is almost like a controversial question.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I just
you
asked the
know,
question. Where do you want to go with it? That
putting
is
out
up to you.
dirty laundry. Um, um, I mean, I want to first of all say that I I want to acknowledge like all of the work that dancers put into their art form, like the time, the money, the pain, the tears, the aches, the injuries, the you know, the successes, like, and I think that it is very important to understand that there are trends to a certain extent. I mean, with everything, but there are trends of people who want to cut corners.
Mhm.
And I think that is an issue. You
Hmm.
know, that really is an issue. Now, on the flip side, there's also the issue of are the resources available for dancers or for people wanting to really invest in dance to actually do it? Um, and again, you know, my journey is an example of somebody who sort of tried, you know, piecing things together how I could and trying to train consistently, sometimes not with the same mentor.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but it would differ. And I say it would differ because, again, like some people went to like big institutions and became professional ballet dancers, professional contemporary dancers. Other people either resisted that way or didn't do that, or their dance form doesn't have those institutions.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it is a balance. And I feel like, you know, as somebody who's pretty young in my professional career, it is a balance of, again, respecting those who have come before you, also learning from them, also understanding that I have something to offer, that I'm developing my own voice, my own movement, my own way. And yeah, but I think there are definitely some issues of, you know, how much respect is given to dance as an art form.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There are lots of issues. There are lots of issues around that. And I think also, I mean, what I realize is that I also really respect people who like are continuously training or continuously learning and exploring. I think that makes a difference. Um, yeah, okay, those are my thoughts for now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tricky question, but one thing that I do know for me, it's always about self. It goes back to self, and within that is like before you can work hard to find a better dance partner, you got to work on yourself. So it's one of those things like for the people that I dance with, people that have helped my practice get, grow. um I had to ask a lot of questions for myself about like what is this thing, what is that thing, like if even nowadays when people ask me who do you have like dancers that are your idols, I'm like, oh,
Mm,
I don't have one. I have many. Like when I see people dance, I'm like, there's always something about every individual that I can take from and trying to support my work. So I feel like it's one of those things for me, even like when doing a duet. you have to be a really good soloist to do a duet, because you have to know yourself.
Mm.
You have to know how to stand within your technique before you can lift somebody else, you know. Yeah, so yeah, for me it's pretty much that, you know, self
Mm.
always helps other people, and then if everybody's doing the same thing, then automatically it kind of like everything can come together. But if you're not putting your part seriously, then it's very hard for other people to affect you in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying, Polga, also that I'm thinking about is how do artists, like, how does our vision align?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's like, yeah, because it could be that somebody, we're at two different journeys in
Mhm.
our artistic creation or path,
Mhm.
but there's something that I can offer that doesn't have to be strictly dance, or that doesn't have to look like how I want it to look.
Mhm.
So understanding how to collaborate, every collaboration is going to be different.
Yeah.
And yeah, and understanding each other's roles. Like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of this collaboration, or what is the purpose of this project, and how can what are our roles in contributing to it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's nice
Yeah.
to have endless questions in life. You know, and most of those questions probably you will never answer, you know, you will never find the answer to it. It's one of those things, you just write down those questions and throw them on the floor, and every day if you can just ask yourself, and then, you know, they might never come. But the fact that you're actually investing on asking yourself, then, you know, it helps you see the space differently every time you walk in. Like if I have to repeat the same question, the same answer again, I'm not gonna speak the same way. So, you know, it's the same thing with the question. Like if you read today the question, tomorrow you read the same question, you're gonna read it differently, because your thoughts are gonna travel to somewhere else, because you're learning so much answers every time from the same question. So yeah, a little,
Mm.
yeah, just to add a bit about this place of like unknown and knowing and being and not being around, you know, like it's all magic. I feel like art is magic. Like, you know, Zara knows how I call this salad bowl, because you can literally throw anything in that salad bowl, and don't worry about it if everybody likes it. But if you made it with love, that's what matters, right?
I
Yeah.
was waiting for the salad
Oh,
reference.
it was coming.
So just to kind of bring, I'm gonna go off topic for a little bit because you said the salad and Zara knows, but everybody's like, what are you talking about? So just to explain, if you can explain your salad reference to everybody, so then everybody can be with us in your
Right.
your salad terminologies, as I call it.
Yeah, I mean this salad thing, I've been saying this terminology for a while now, because I like it. You know, literally what this means is right now the three of us are in conversation, and even though like our goal is to answer one question, but every answer is different. So in my salad, I'm gonna put whatever I'm craving at that moment, and in an artistic way, this means you can pretty much create anything, and then tomorrow when you come back to, you know, do that same recipe, you can decide to take the tomato out and add something else, and you can your salad change every day, but in your mind, you know, you want to build the salad, you know what the end is, but how you make it changes.
It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, thank you for explaining that. Although I
Yeah.
heard it, but thank you. But what I'm also getting is that at the end of the day, again, it comes back to you, right?
Yeah.
It comes back to you, but it also come back on Emily. You have said the intention. Like, what is your reason for us collaborating? Why are we sharing space, movement,
Mm.
air, time with each other? What is our end goal, if there is an end goal? What is our why, right? My
Mm.
mother always says why has a very long tail. And the reason why she says that is you can ask me
Nice.
why from today till tomorrow. Like,
Wow.
you guys know me, I'm asking questions like all the time. Just that's my natural habitat, right? But the thing is like you said, through questions, it could be the same question asked differently, or it could be the same question that I asked you on Monday and asked you on Wednesday, but the answer will differ depending on you yourself, where you are
Yeah.
in that space. What are you feeling? What is your end goal? Whatever it is may change. And being comfortable with that change, right? And if it's not going to work, then seeing how can we make it work
Yeah.
for ourselves? How can we make it work together so then we can have a beautiful salad?
Mm. Yes.
So my last question for any artist, whether it's somebody who is new and now beginning their journey, somebody who is in their journey, somebody who's shifting practices within that journey, what advice would you give them in order for them to find their voice?
Oof. Finding voice. I think for most of the time, I feel like your voice is ready to be found. Most of the time, always your voice is ready to be found. I think my internet.
And you're back. I think you're good now.
Oh yeah, sorry, my internet went down for a bit. But I think I lost what I was about to say for a second there. Yeah, I think
You
I
were saying
lost.
that your voice
Your voice
is
is
waiting to
already
be
there.
found.
Yeah, your voice is already found. I mean, what I mean is it's ready to be found. Found. Sorry for my English there for a sec, because it's a place that you have to really be comfortable with knowing what you want to do with your voice. Is the biggest question, because if you're ready to be heard, people are ready for you. And confidence matters a lot. And confidence for me doesn't mean like you have to know everything or you have to know yourself 100%, because nobody knows themselves 100%. You can only know so much about yourself and so much about other people. But when you have that confidence of like be ready to be heard, and like there's one practice that I always do in the studio. Not, when I say always, like most of the time, that's one of my favorite practice. It's called dance with no agenda. And I learned this through my time working with professional choreographers with TDT. Dance with no agenda literally means you just walk in the studio, put in the music with a lot of people. You don't tell nobody what to do. You don't correct nobody. You just let them speak, let them dance, let them do whatever they want to do it. If you want to lie down on the floor and roll for 20 minutes, there's no agenda towards it, which I think it kind of helps you jump into this world of like be heard, because the world is ready for you. You just have to find the confidence of like jump into it. Forget about the agenda. Just focus on what do you want people to know about you, because the agenda is the same as the question, that always your agenda can change any day. But if you have the mindset towards this future that you're trying to achieve, the world is ready for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's because the way I think of confidence, to continue on that thought, is
Yeah.
to believe in you.
Yes.
To believe in what you're doing. Like, if you don't believe, it doesn't matter how good you are or how far along you are, you'll sort of be stuck. And for me, that connects back to fear. So just letting go of fear. I'm telling you, I was every step of the way, I was afraid. But one moment when I can say that, oh, this was like such a juicy moment, or it's such a like a moment that I really cherish, is one time I just spoke what I wanted, and it happened. I was sitting in a rehearsal. This actually was specifically with Ronald Taylor. I was watching Michael perform a solo, and then Ronald looked at me and he said, what are you thinking? And then I said, I see myself doing this piece on stage. And even though I was afraid, in that moment, I was just, it was like a rush. It's not that I was afraid, but I had been afraid leading up to those times. And just so encouraging, like younger artists or upcoming artists to just dare, like
Yeah.
just do it, let go of the fear and be curious, like just do it, and then you see what happens, like, and you'll learn from trying or from not trying. You'll understand your worth. There's so much that comes out of letting go of fear,
Yeah.
because you can't be good when you start. Like, as in, you know what I mean? Like, not that you're bad, but there's always going to be something to work on. You're always going to have to find your way. So if you're afraid to be bad at what you do, just because you're learning, like that just sucks. Like that's just going to stunt you. So, and I think back to the idea of the voice, your voice is waiting to be, or it's there, right? So if you believe in it and you trust in it, then you start to just be great right away, because you're speaking from your authentic self. And speaking from your authentic self is letting go of what you think you're supposed to do, or how you think you're supposed to look as a dancer, right? And just telling your story. Yeah.
So letting go of that fear, and moving past the bridge of fear. So when you move past the bridge of fear, your ears will be widened, and you will be able to hear the voice that was already there. Yes, that was. You guys are
Also,
go ahead, Paula.
no, there's this thing about like, but also being scared is the best part of it, because it means like you care about the thing you're scared of. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be scared. So it's nice to be scared of the thing that you care about. You know what I mean? So there's a positivity behind this fear that you have, that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to start something you have no idea where it can take you. Because there's this African proverb that is like my favorite one that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it's one of those things, like, once you never know who's going to join you on this walk that you're taking it. You just have to take that first step. And then once you take that first step, open your arms, you'll see somebody might hold you. And then next thing you know, you have hundreds of people holding your hands and walking with you. So you just have to take that step. And then whatever happens, it was meant to happen. And just, you have to deal with that, because the fear is a part of the process.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So working through the fear, because I think a lot of times I would just allow the fear to be an excuse, and to be like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
A couple times I've had people say, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Or else I would have been like, nope, I just can't.
Yeah.
So working through the fear. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Is using that fear to be your driving force, right?
Correct.
You're like, I'm scared of it, but why not? What's the worst that can happen? I already know that maybe it might not work for me. So imagine if it could actually work for me, right? So it's like, Emily, when you were saying before, and AC said, why aren't you doing Haitian folklore? And you're like, well, I can't. She's like, but why not? Right? Like, it's trying to move away from the excuses and just saying, let me just try it, right? I already think it's not going to work. So imagine if it does, it would just be, great, right? Which is like the beauty, or as Mike says, the art, the magic of the art. I'm also going to read, Fatima says, if you found your voice, but there's a fear of this, too much practicality in the Western world, especially for newcomers who use the flow of spontaneity in Africa. Yes, so very true. A lot of the times, because we're in a new environment, that creates another barrier. But it's remembering yourself, right? We're going back to self, remembering yourself, because yourself does not change based on the environment. right?
Nope.
It feels like it, but I will always be Zara, whether I'm here in Toronto or Montreal or back in Ghana or so on and so forth, right? And it's letting yourself
Mhm.
shine through in this new
Yeah.
environment, right? Will it be
Mm-hmm.
easy? No. But it's remembering yourself and letting it shine through this new environment. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And can I add
sure.
also that what I'm hearing from Fatima and a bit of what I was saying too is letting go of what we think it should look like. So
Yeah.
as a newcomer, I think there are barriers, and also um, there's a sense maybe of not quite knowing like understanding the environment or understanding like the dance scene, for example. And for me, it's often been feeling like my goal had to look like this, or
Mhm.
um, dancing Haitian folk had to look like this, and I
Mm.
had to have like a company and people like right beside me there. But then it didn't end up looking like that.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that I didn't do it, right?
Right.
And so understanding that, yeah, letting go of like, oh, it should be like this or it should be like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it tells me of this thing of the future of whatever going back to the origin of this question of like the beginners, creators, or people that are already think that I've established already in a place of my art form is here now. I don't think the end place exists. There's no goal. There's no
Mm.
future. There's only present that is endless, if it makes sense. So
Mhm.
tomorrow is just another present and the future, pretty much. So if you're thinking of like, is that question of where do you see yourself in 10 years? I'm like, I'm seeing myself whatever 10 years get me because I'm focused on today, right now, this present, this
Mm.
moment, what I'm working on. And then when I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna work on tomorrow as if it's today now, because that's where I am now. So the 10 years will come based on like if you keep piling this amount of like knowledge from today, and then you'll see you can save so much information in 10 years without having to put so much pressure on this goal. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just, just keep walking. Just keep
Yeah.
walking.
Take a
And then
step, open
eventually,
your
like you
arms.
say, you will have people
Yeah.
who will join you, and then you will get
Yeah.
somewhere. And then when you get there, you just keep going. There's no like plateau to be like, I've
Yeah.
arrived and
Yeah.
I'm great and I'm
It's an
done,
endless
right?
mountain.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So before we start saying our goodbyes, if there's anything else that you would like to offer in this space, I leave it open floor for the both of you.
Well, I'd say too, you, you know, like having mentorship is huge. And
Hmm.
for me, it's looked like different people at different stages of my life and overlapping mentorship. I talk a lot about Peniel Guerrier, who's currently somebody who's training me, who's also a friend, who's, somebody very dear to me. But there's so many people who have influenced me. Every time I work with someone, I feel like, in a sense, they're mentoring me. So gratitude to them,
Yeah.
I will go to all these people. And also, like, an additional note for newcomers, for up and coming artists, like mentorship is just so huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Same. Yeah, that is like key, in this art form we make. And mentorship also can come in many ways, of course, but you also have to know which path you really, really trying to focus on. um but also, like, just to say, since people are here chatting and stuff like that, like, if anybody feels like there's that moment of like trying to continue talk about this, trying to understand more about, like, we also want to learn from people, because right now, it's a conversation between the three of us towards people out there. But if anybody feels like they still want to ask different kind of questions that is not in this
Hmm.
art form, like of Instagram or like that, feel free to reach us out and ask questions. And I think we're always looking for more friends in this world, so it's nice to like have extra people out there, because this thing of community is a tree that never stop growing. So if anybody wants to join that tree, feel free to just follow us on social media and hit us up. We can chat more about this kind of stuff any day.
Absolutely. The conversation keeps going, right? Like,
Yes.
yes, we're coming to a close for this series, but it doesn't necessarily mean that after tomorrow we don't
Yeah.
want to hear about it, right?
Right. Yes.
So you can definitely, stay in contact with Emilie, with Pulga, with Dance Immersion as well. And we'll keep going with this conversation. We'll also keep doing this series we have 3 more episodes to go. So the conversation keeps going. And every time we have the conversation, there's more gems, more experiences, more perspective that adds on. We keep building the salad for our main meal at the end of the season. So it's absolutely amazing. So I just want to say, Emilie, Pulga, thank you so much. On behalf of Dance Immersion, thank you so much for sharing
Yes.
your time, your energy, your space, your perspective, your experiences. We appreciate it so much. I admire the both of you, and I'm always following what each one are doing. I see you everywhere. There's always a poster of Pulga somewhere in Toronto, and there's always a poster of Emilies somewhere. So keep
see
thriving.
Emily. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now Emily's everywhere.
Yeah.
So keep thriving, keep shining. Thank you to the Dance Immersion team, to our founder and executive director, Miss Vivian Scarlett, our curator and program director, Tamia Warren-Sherry, our lovely communications assistant, Jillian Grayson, and my name is Zahra Badua, the administrative assistant here at Dance Immersion. I thank you to everybody who has been here in this space, listening, contributing. We absolutely adore and appreciate you. We will be here every Wednesday at 7 o'clock with new guests. I hope that you have a great Wednesday and a great rest of the week. And once again, Emilie, Pulga, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
It was a
it.
pleasure.
And we'll see you soon.
You got it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye,
Thank you,
Bye, y'all.
everyone. Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks.